My name's Eldon Welchman.
Okay,
I live at 3675 South, 2025 West.
perfect.
And my complaint is that they're doing construction there by that Hinckley Drive on 1900. They're building some apartment buildings. And their backup alarms are so loud, I have to wear these when I go outside. I can run a lawnmower, not have to wear this all the time. But their backup alarms are so loud, especially when it's starting on some of that dirt, that I went out there just moved some stuff because I didn't know where my hearing protection was. And my ears actually almost started ringing because the noise is that loud. I worked construction all my life, and we've never had that loud of backup alarms on any of our equipment. I was just wondering, isn't there some type of decibel limit that they're only allowed to make so much noise?
That's a good question. There is a noise ordinance. Council, do you know where he's talking about?
Yep.
Okay, everybody clear?
Every time I back my bus up, I hear it beep, beep, beep.
Yeah, and I sense,
Bus is only probably about a 10. This is probably about an 80.
So
trying.
is it the construction or is it the vehicles
That's the backup alarms on the vehicle.
on the vehicles?
yep.
Particularly the front end loader.
Well, we have a cool little decibel reading machine. Could we go check it out? Have somebody go check it out and see where it fits? I mean, not that it really helps you if it doesn't meet it, but if it does meet criteria, then at least you'd have something to go with. And if it doesn't, then I guess you've got earplugs for a while, but because you're right, there is an ordinance.
So what's the noise ordinance? Not before 7 and not after 10, or?
And
Yeah,
then it's 90.
there's a
I think.
timeline in the morning or at night. I want to tell you that it's like 9 to 6 in the morning is what the ordinance says. But the difference between, there's an industrial component to that, and then there's a residential component. And because this development's occurring next to a residential unit, it's conceivable it could very well be over the 65 decibels or the 75 decibels that the document calls out today. And we won't know that unless there's a reading. But there is a provision within that same ordinance that talks about some exceptions. And I think what we just need to do is you got a good point. At this moment, I'm not sure how to answer your question. Only to suggest is that we got to go back, we got to pull the ordinance. It's a Title III or Title II, I think, where the safety requirement is on the law. We'd have to look at the ordinance and see what it says, and then I think we have to measure. So, council, you okay at this moment? Maybe that's our next step would be let's read the ordinance, staff will read the ordinance, and then we basically go out there and do a test and kind of get an idea where we sit on this.
Is it the time of the day also, or is it too early in the
Basically been
morning?
after 8 o'clock and shuts down about 6:30.
At night? So most of the work is during the day?
Yeah.
That's basically the hours that they've been working. Friday,
And there's
sometimes they
provisions
shut down a
within
little early.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sometimes Friday they shut down a little bit early.
Okay,
I think they've got their 50 hours in, or 40 hours or whatever they're working.
in the day. But there's provisions within the ordinance about the time that noise is acceptable. And I think that's part of we got to read the ordinance to find out. Okay. You brought an interesting point. We appreciate that. We'll just have to do some work on this. If you would, maybe it would be best if you leave at least your name and an email, possible a phone number with Matt, and then we can reach back to you, because if it's bothering you, it's probably bothering a lot of other people around you. And if you don't mind, maybe we can share what we find with you, and then you can maybe share it with your neighbors.
There's about 4 of my neighbors that are gone. They leave about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and don't get home till after 5:30.
So they're kind of probably not involved at all.
They're not
Okay.
hardly involved.
Well,
But I'm
it's
retired.
involving you, so we obviously need to check it. Okay, so we'll take that action on, okay?
Yeah, because I talked to this lady in the, guess where you get your building permits, and she's basically give me a no answer thing.
Well, and we're not sure again, this is new to us. We just somebody has to read the ordinance, and we'll do that, and we need to take a measurement.
Okay.
Okay.
That's probably all we can do, okay, at this moment. But let's see if we can find the answers, and if we can find a solution, we'll find it.
Okay, so who was it?
Matt, he's the city manager right there? Yeah. Okay, hey, thank you. Okay. Anybody else would like to share a thought? Kevin?
I'm Kevin Homer. I live at 5398 South, 4000 West here in Roy.
Thank you.
I had a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. The first one was in regard to the email that I sent out to everybody about the draft resolution, that out of a sense of discretion and mercy, we're not going to talk about that right now. You're going to have a long meeting today,
Okay.
including the long meeting you've already had. But the other point is specifically about the drafting, the adjustments to the general plan that y'all have been doing now for, Steve, how many years? 2 years now we've been working on the general plan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, quite a while. I've attended most of those meetings. All I want to do is say I really appreciate your efforts in adjusting this. I really suspect that if previous city councils 20, 30, 40 years ago had taken this much time and this much care and then reviewed that document as you were suggesting earlier, Roy might be a little bit better than what it is right now, and we wouldn't have so many things to fix. So I appreciate your efforts and continue that course. I like what you're doing.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Okay. Anybody else would like to share a thought? Okay, seeing none, we'll drop out of public comment period. We got some action items. First action item is a public hearing to consider approving an adjustment to the fiscal year 2022 budget. And Amber, I believe you're talking. Share with us, and then we'll open up to public, I'll ask for public vote so we can go to public hearing, please.
All right, Mayor and Council, I present to you Resolution 22-4 for your consideration to amend the fiscal year 2022 budget based on the information you received in your council packets. This proposed resolution will increase the previously approved budget by $453,829, and an itemized list of all the expense increases would included in your packets, and we have it up here on the screen as well. In the general fund, we have received $264,700 in one-time building permit revenue, mostly related to the MIDA project, as well as $12,300 in Roy Days donations from last summer, and the fire department has received an EMS grant for $6,829. This revenue is enough to cover the expense increases that we are requesting. Some of the highlighted items are like janitorial costs and fuel costs have been higher than we have expected. Roy Days exceeded budget by $33,500, mostly in the celebration activities line item. In the last meeting, we presented to you new wage scales for the part-time staff at the complex, aquatic center, and recreation departments, and this budget amendment includes those increases that we talked about at the last meeting. And then also the part-time wage budget at the complex has never been adjusted back to its previous budget amount pre-COVID. So this budget amendment would get them back to where they were. Now that they're fully operating, it would bring them back to where they were in 2020. And then the remainder of the revenue we would transfer to the capital projects fund for expenditure increases needed there. In the capital projects fund, we had a couple emergency purchases, including a diving board stand at the aquatic center and an HVAC major repair for the main city building here. And then Parks and Recreation is requesting $20,000 for final finishes to the pole barn and $20,000 for xeriscaping at the Parks and Rec building. And the remaining revenue would be added to fund balance for future use. In the utility enterprise and solid waste funds, we are requesting increases to cover the change to monthly utility billing and credit card fees, as well as increases in engineering costs. We recommend that you receive public input and then consider approving Resolution 22-4.
Perfect. Okay, Amber, thank you. Okay, with that then, I'd like to see if I can get a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are now in a public hearing. If you have any thoughts or comments or questions about what we're going to talk about here in terms of a budget adjustment, please step up to the mic.
Make one other comment on the same issue thing.
On the budget?
Basically on that apartment building,
Hold on that thought. Maybe we can come back and readdress it. I just want to have a budget. I just opened up a public hearing to talk about the budget, so I need to keep that focused. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, that might work too, yeah. Anybody want to talk about the budget? Okay, hearing none, then do I have a motion then to go out of a public hearing?
Motion to close
Okay.
public hearing?
Thank you, Sophie. Okay, do I have
I'll
a second?
it.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are, any opposed? Okay, we are out of public hearing. Now, council, do you have any questions for Amber relative to this resolution 22-4 that's about to be considered?
I do.
Please.
I was wondering in regards to the Roy days, so the 33,500 was overage from last year's Roy days, or?
Overage from what we had put in the budget to spend for this year, not compared to last year, just compared to the budget for this year.
Okay, say that one more time then for me.
So not compared to last year,
Mhm.
just what was budgeted this year, that was how much went over from what they had anticipated spending.
So we already are anticipating spending $33,000 more than we thought.
Yes, but this is for last year's Roy days, so last year's August.
Okay?
Okay, anything else, Diane?
Nope, thanks.
Okay, other comments, questions about the budget? Okay, with that then, do I have then a motion to approve Resolution 22-5, which is the resolution announcing an intent I'm sorry, wrong one. Consider Resolution 22-4 approving the adjustments to the fiscal year 2022 budget.
I'll make a motion
Okay, thank you,
to
Sophie.
approve resolution 22-4.
Thank
I'll
you. Do I have a
second
second? And I got a second. This is a roll call vote. Brittany?
Councilmember Joe Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Sophie Paul,
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Now, we have consideration of Resolution 22-5, which is a resolution announcing an intent to transition from bi-monthly utility bill schedules to monthly utility bill. Matt, I think you're going to talk that.
So, Mayor, Council, as the mayor spoke about, Resolution 22-5 would transition us from the bi-monthly billing to a monthly billing cycle. We've talked about this a couple of times in the past. It's been about 5 years in the making of transitioning into the radio read water meters. The intent of this would be the last final bill would be for the May, for the bi-monthly, and that would be the winter catch-up for March and April. So your June bill would be your first monthly bill. We talked a little bit about that last time, but this resolution, if you approve it, would just transition from that bi-monthly to a monthly billing cycle. So staff would recommend approval.
Okay, council, any comments, questions about this particular resolution?
I'm
So-
happy we're doing it.
Okay,
I was wondering, the additional fee on the budget that we just did, is that something to do with the increased credit card payment? Is that, or will this be something later?
But we were actually, the credit card fees were increasing over time, and so this was to subsidize that, of just that overage that we were already incurring, and then some to create the rest of the year. Because really, in this budget year, we only have that one billing cycle,
One month
that
of June.
1 month of June that you're gonna see an increase to. So the majority of that was for just the rest of the year of truing up the costs.
do you anticipate then going into the next budget year, we may have to make some adjustments?
Yeah, and we're planning on doing that in our regular
Okay,
budget cycle.
in the budget cycle,
Yes.
okay?
Because that will be one of the additional expenses. We talked about increased staffing expenses for doing this, and now increased credit card, because now we'll be having to do twice as often. So the
Yeah,
fee, or
or-
is it an amount
Uh,
on the credit card?
Mainly decreasing in staffing because we're not having to walk
Okay.
to read. But then, yes, increasing because we're gonna be doing double the amount of payments on that.
So the administrative side of the house basically is going to see an increase in requirements because there'll be much more billing.
Correct.
But the public work side of the
public
house
works
that's
side of
doing
it.
the actual site assessment or measuring is going to be able, under this new electronic stuff, will not have to do that.
Yeah.
They can literally drive through and collect the data.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Okay. Any other
I can
comments,
answer that as well.
questions?
Hey, I do have a question. This is probably not popular, but it does cost the city money. Can we charge a convenience fee for those that choose to pay by credit cards?
So cities have charged a technology fee before. A lot of the time, we've talked about this in the past, about doing something where it's over $1,000, like building permits, because a lot of the rewards credit cards, when they come in, you can be, they'll charge $10,000 and we'll pay a $500 fee. And so I think that's a little bit more reasonable. A technology fee, we could also just increase the utility fees to subsidize that as well if we wanted to.
I was just curious.
If you look at the bulk of the fees are coming in as credit card, or the bulk of the payments are coming in as credit card, it's also easier on staff to do that than it is
So there's
to
a
collect
benefit
funds
to it.
too. So there's an offset.
Okay, I was
Okay.
just curious.
Okay, good question. Okay, anything else? Okay, and do I have a motion then to approve Resolution 22-5, which talks about transitioning to a bi-monthly utility billing cycle to a monthly utility billing cycle?
So moved.
I
I'll
use
second
you
that.
because you were so excited
I
about
know,
it coming.
I know.
Do I have a
didn't know they
second?
said and or an.
Sophie seconded it.
Second it.
I heard that second, thank you. Okay, this is a roll call vote. Brittany?
Well, I'm not as excited as Ann about it. I like the bi-monthly, but okay, I'll go for it.
Councilmember Sophie Paul,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
and Councilmember Joe Paul.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, council, want to talk on the discussion items. I sent you a piece of information dealing with a center line dividing on 6,000 South. I think Matt or Brandon, you guys may have had a chance to kind of look at this. I think at this point, any comments or things, statements you want to share with the council would be very appropriate. So who wants to speak?
Maybe, sure.
Thank you, Brandon.
So, yeah, like you said, there definitely is an issue with the center line down there. So I guess I called to see what it would cost to have that etched off, and it's about $2,700. So, I mean, that's kind of up to you guys if you want to move it.
Did they just
or-
sandblast it?
Yeah. So it's like $1.35 a foot, and I think it's like 2,000 feet. Because it's basically from about 4,050 to 4,300. And, the south side isn't been updated yet. So, I mean, I guess my recommendation would be is we could avoid painting it for the next couple of years because it's not a real high volume road, which probably really requires the center line. And then once it kind of fades out naturally, we can go back and readjust it then. Or unless you guys want to pay the expense to have it etched off, so.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, from my mind, it's really just more of a public safety issue. If you had a chance to drive down there and look at it, there's 13 feet on the north side of that road, and there's about 29 feet on the south side of it. Lots of room on the south side coming east, but when you're going west. And we got all of those residents who are basically sitting on that shoulder. Now, that's not an improved shoulder in front of them. So pulling out of their driveway, they got literally 13 feet as oncoming traffic. If they're going to get their mail, they have to walk literally almost into the street to get their mail. And it really comes down to this. We were okay when 6,000 basically just kind of dead end down there for the most part. But with Clinton went in and actually broke through that corridor on 4,300, I'm not sure if you realize it, but that's a really busy road now. 4,300 gets a lot of traffic. And interesting enough, a lot of people are finding 6,000 to be a real nice shot down there. In fact, they oftentimes, I've had them pass me, I'm going 25 miles an hour, and they got to literally be doing 40 or 45. It's a nice shot. And 6,000 is really kind of convenient because with the exception of the light that's up on the top of 1900 and the light that's on 3500, there is no other stopping. That's a nice road to get right down to the west side of the city. A lot of people are taking advantage of it. We're seeing a lot more traffic. I see this as more of a public safety concern for the residents who have to pull out on that street and the people that have to walk out into that street because there's no curb and no gutter on that north side of that. They literally are standing in the dirt, in some cases right by the road. I think it might be a good idea, personally, if you in fact would consider just have the city go ahead and make arrangements to remove that stripe and just center it, just put it back in the center. I think it's really a public safety issue. So your decision, I think I provided you enough information in the document that I sent you. Any comments or questions on how we proceed?
May I ask Chief Gwynn what you've noticed for that area? And are you noticing safety issues or problems, or how the topic even came up?
So, what I see happening, I have no evidence to base this off of experience. You etch the line, there's still gonna be a line. Traffic will still follow the line. If we wanna do a center line, if we're gonna etch it, I would actually suggest repainting a new line so that drivers, especially who are used to driving that area, will have something new to actually tell them where they need to place their vehicle in the roadway. And I would even go as far as maybe considering a fog line so we can actually delineate the edge of the road.
That's an interesting thought.
Are you finding that there is a big safety issue currently right now, or is is this 2-year wait to repaint it later? Do you find that that's a big issue to be really assertive right now, or can we give it a little time?
Come to my attention as far as safety is concerned, but you guys hear about some of these problems as a council probably long before I do. I don't hear about it until someone's actually calling 911.
Right.
But if you're just asking me if, if we should remark the road, or we do remark the road, I'm just gonna suggest that if we etch it, you're still gonna leave a line, etch it, remark the center line. If the concern is pedestrians on the side of the road, I would actually delineate the usage part of the road by painting a fog line on either side so that there is no doubt where the lane begins and where the lane ends.
All right.
So when you say fog line, is it the outer edges?
That's the white line.
So, okay, so when I think of that, if somebody stops in front of me, I'm gonna stop. If there's a line on both sides of me, I'm gonna stop. If not, I'm gonna go out and around and in the dirt.
Correct, and that's the thing,
And
if
that's-
there is no fog line there, they are
Right.
allowed to pass on the right.
They can go in the dirt,
Correct.
unless there's a line.
Well, they can't go in the dirt, they can't leave the asphalt if there's no fog line.
Right.
If there is a fog line, they can't even move to the other asphalt. They
But I
have to
think
stay in their lane.
Yep, it alleviates.
And so if the concern is
Hmm.
pedestrian safety, especially with mailboxes being so close to the road, if you paint the fog line, that tells the operator of the vehicle, you
Stop.
cannot
Stay
leave
in that
the
lane.
lane. If someone stops in front of you, you cannot go around them.
Right.
All right.
Hey, Brandon,
My suggestion.
what about instead of, I'm just throwing this out there, instead of blasting it, what if you spray it? Do we have the means to tar it?
Yeah, so I mean, we've painted black in the past, and the yellow will still bleed through the black.
Well,
Yeah, so I mean, it would last. I don't know, just depending on the perfect storm, but 6 months or so. I mean, and we could continue to paint it black, but that's,
Yeah,
the,
the
only, that's the
complaints-
only issue with that.
Yeah, the complaints that are basically have not come through the police department. The complaints has come right to the city. And so that's the reason. And the purposes of this thought process and this discussion would be is to try to address the issue so we don't get a 911 call because somebody gets clipped, okay, by a car that's actually in their lane, but they are really, really close.
is that section there due to ever get curb and gutter and sidewalk?
That's a city plan.
Yeah. I mean, we do want to 6,000 basically from 19 all the way down to 43. We have certain areas that
Right.
we are trying to get grants and stuff to sidewalk that and curb and gutter it.
And you say ordinarily in about 2 years you'd be repainting it anyway.
Yeah, so it usually fades out. I mean, we paint it every year, so I guess that's kind of where I'm leaning on you guys is to decide if you want me to etch it and we'll repaint it and center it up, or if you want me to just avoid painting that section for a couple of years and then repainting it in a couple of years. So
Do we have the means to paint ourselves, or do we hire that out?
hire the striping down the road out.
So then you're going to stripe the center line and 2 fog lines?
Yeah.
And how much would that be? So you've got 2,700 to etch, and then
Yeah, so painting's a whole lot cheaper. I believe we're right around 40 cents a foot, so you're probably less than $1,000 or something to
But you're
paint.
gonna paint 3 lines.
But yeah, but we're painting that regardless. You know, we budget for that every year to restripe.
The center.
Yeah, all of our lines throughout the city every year.
But the additional would just be the 2 fog lines
Yeah,
then.
think if
yeah,
you're gonna
we
do it, you gotta
would
do it
just
right.
assume that in our budget. It wouldn't be very expensive.
Council, what do you think we need to do here? I guess my comment would be, is are you okay with the idea of going ahead and having it etched and corrected? Or do you think we want to wait 2 years and let it fade out and then do it when we're going to do it?
I guess the other question is, do you have enough money in your budget to absorb it, or do we need to take it out of council contingency?
Oh, I'm sure we could absorb it. It's Class C money, so. we could
I would say if
utilize
you're gonna
that.
do it right and just blast it and restripe it and stripe all 3 lines. I've driven down that a lot. I know exactly. Matter of fact, I went to turn into some of those places and you about get run over, so.
Okay. Okay, I think I got a majority. Okay, Matt, if you would, let's go ahead and see if I can get the Public Works team to go ahead and just work that
Okay.
piece when they can.
And I guess probably my next question is, how pressing would you like them to come out and do it immediately? Because we usually paint July to August, somewhere in there, in that time frame. Is that?
My comment, it was probably more about, when I talked to the public, I was telling them, it says it may have more to do about whether or not the temperature is right.
Yeah.
So that we, in fact, when we put it, we're going to have it to bond, so it's not painting in the snow. So you guys are the best one to work it into your schedule.
Okay.
But if
Yeah.
you'll take that as an action, then,
Okay,
okay,
we'll take care of it.
perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, conversation about farmer's market. Travis?
Me and Matt will kind of tag team this. As you recall, probably about 6 weeks ago, we all received an email from an individual approaching us about running a farmer's market in our city. And we've talked with staff and done some things. And one of the things that we decided is, if this was something that you guys would like to explore, we're probably better off to send out an RFP, because we'd be using public lands. So I think what we wanted to talk about as much as anything is, if you wanted us to explore the idea of having a farmer's market in our community, ran by a separate individual, are you okay with us getting an RFP out?
So can I just jump in then
Please.
and ask, so we've done this twice before, but there's been very little city support or anything like that, and they've fizzled. And so I think that before we do it, we ought to really look at why they fizzled. You know, I can maybe be, have some of my input from that sort of thing. And if we do that, if you're thinking subcontracting it out, then it's still going to represent the city. So I think we need to be very careful at what their vendor fees are. I do think that the date of the farmers market is very important, because, and Wednesday probably would be a good day, because the only real farmers market around is in Park City, and so that's not going to be a competitive thing. And so, the only information we really have right now is that proposal that was sent. But I think that there definitely are some pitfalls that would need to be evaluated before we even consider it, where we've had 2 failed attempts. And really, how many farmers and how are we going to get the vendors? Because that's a really big thing. Right now, that proposal said 70% agriculture. Well, I'm not really, and local, they wanted local, and I don't know what local means. But starting on May 12th is pretty silly, or May 15th or something, when most people plant their gardens on May 12th. I'm not sure where they're thinking that. 30% non-ag, and what type of non-ag vendors. I think their location is a little bit skewed from at least an agricultural perspective. I believe that would be an important thing. And the Emma Russell Park is probably not the ideal perspective from an agricultural perspective, because you don't have access to a wider variety. It will never go if you're only depending on Roy residents. You're going to have to be able to draw in from other cities to be able to do that, and real advertisement is going to have to be part of it. And vendor fees are very important, at least for the agriculture people. Also, there are a couple of other details we can go into, like what, the city legal responsibilities and stuff would be in regards to that. But, timing. So I think that it would be a great thing for Roy. We've kind of been left behind, for 20 years now, and whether we can make up that lost time. possibly? What were some of the ideas you thought, and who were you thinking of doing an RFP to?
I think you brought up several great points, and you are correct. We have submitted for ramp grants in the past and tried to run our own farmers markets to very, very minimal success. I think day of the week is critical. The proposal that we received talked about it on a Wednesday night. That to me makes the most sense. You wouldn't be competing against some of the bigger ones, whether they're in Salt Lake or even Ogden, or as you mentioned, Park City.
That's really the only one on Wednesday right now.
I think it's critical for us to come up with something that is very, very minimal for my staff. We don't have anything budgeted for it. We don't have time for it, and we don't have man hours to apply to it. So from our perspective, it would be critical that we did something or found an individual who's willing to carry the heavy lifting. We've talked about it because of the day of the week, and we're smack dab in the middle of a really busy time in the recreation world. And we've actually decided as a group, if we were going to do it, we would want to put it we have a joint venture with America First Credit Union on the parking lot they have there on 1900 that kind of butts up with the park. And we've contacted America First Credit Union and asked them, hey, if we decide to head down this road, is this something that we could do in this parking lot? They said yes. I mean, they did have a few conditions, insurance, cleanup. They would want a footprint of what it was supposed to look like. Set days and times, and they wanted to let us know that they'd need to be able, they would have to use our restrooms, which are just in the park itself. Those were their biggest concerns, but they said it's something that we could definitely work out. Our agreement with them typically says we can use it from 5 to closing of the park. The only request from the individual was to come in on that Wednesday at 3. We mentioned that to America First Credit Union, and they were fine with that idea and notion. Since the pandemic, most of their staff works from home now, believe it or not. And so they built that parking lot, and it's not getting a ton of use at this point in time. As far as other things in the RFP, I mean, like I say, the big ones for me obviously are going to follow any city and or county rules. If they're going to have food trucks or different things like that, everybody's got to be permitted. Everybody's got the farmers markets itself has to have a business license. And then, not to try to get out of it, but lack of involvement from my department, except for some very minor things, would be the things we would be looking for. I do agree with you. I think fees is something that has to take into account. We don't want to be a part of it unless we can see it being successful, and I would work with legal and make sure that as we come up with an RFP that we can address a lot of those concerns that you brought up here.
I've got a question. So that the individual that's wanting to do this, have they done previous?
I've had several
farmers
conversations
markets?
with her, and she's really been informative to me. She has done them in Salt Lake County and other places. She's been involved with them all over. Absolutely.
Well, that brings up a good point. So the purpose of the RFP is simply to suggest is that we're going to use the RFP to allow an individual to access public property.
I think the purpose of the RFP is just to be fair to everybody out
Right.
there that wants to do it.
Right.
That's where we're coming from, of saying, we don't mind doing it, but we don't want to just single-handedly pick somebody.
Right.
That's
So
the
the
main
RFP
purpose for it,
Yeah,
yes.
the RFP simply would then, we're allowing anybody to participate if they choose, but those who apply will be considered.
Correct.
But the contribution that Roy puts into the process would simply to make the space available to this individual who gets awarded the RFP.
Yes, sir.
Because you're saying everything that simply says it's really in the hands of the individual. You're not providing a lot more input. Maybe you put a couple of trash cans out, or maybe you do a couple of minor things, but I don't sense from your words Roy City has a major investment in this effort.
No, absolutely not.
So
And the individual that I've spoken with who submitted the email to you, that they're completely understanding of that, and that's.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd never met her face to face. We've talked on the phone, but yeah, I guess she is.
Okay.
Body language and facial expression, I got the impression it was her.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure that we know what the investment is, because everything Diane is talking about are really important components to this. But it may very well be the kinds of things she's talking about really is not applicable if we're not engaged to the level that she's talking about. There could be an insurance issue because it's dealing with public property. Okay. And even if it goes on to the America First Credit Union parking lot, they're also saying the city will have to have some type of insurance to make that work. Okay. But other than that, I don't necessarily see a whole lot of public involvement in the risk really leverage on the individual who basically is going to put this together. Is that kind of how you see it?
I would agree with that.
Okay. I think Diane's point would be is cautiously, maybe we need to kind of flush more out of this. So I think council, that's probably the one thing you may want to do, but if there is an option here that maybe this could be done, maybe by the time we have our next city council, we got to be careful to move on this because we're going to run out of spring and summer here, and all of a sudden we're talking about fall. So I think we owe it to anybody who chooses to want to basically apply to the RFP it's done so they can engage on this. But I think Diane's comment would be, is there some elements of this proposal that maybe we as a council need to flesh out?
Well, can we have this lady come up and give her spiel?
Uh,
And can,
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm up. It's your moment, Travis. So please,
I'm turning it over to
just give us your name and number or address.
Hi, Jane Wiley. I live at 4745 South, 3600 West here in Roy.
Thank you.
I'm fairly new to Roy. I've been here for 2 years. I moved into my husband's house, so he's familiar. I've been running farmers markets for Salt Lake County for the past 2 years. I am on the leadership team for the Utah Farmers Market Network. So I'm deeply involved in the farmers market community. And especially in the last 2 years, farmers markets have become more important to our local community. We're seeing lots of food insecurity, not just with people of low incomes, but also anybody looking to get fresh produce, meats, fresh baked bread, or bread with good ingredients even, is something that we're not seeing in our grocery stores, or if we are seeing it, it's at astronomical prices. So if we are able to centralize any of that and bring it back to local, we're cutting out a lot of the transportation cost. We're cutting out a lot of costs with the Department of Transportation in general. I want to address a couple of your points. One of the biggest farmers markets is actually here in Ogden, and I do talk with her. Her name is Michael. She's a great person. She runs that market. And they're on Saturday, so this would not be in, we wouldn't compete with them at all. The one in Park City, there's two in Park City actually, and they're both far enough away that we wouldn't necessarily compete with them. And I do know the people that run that. So, and we share vendors back and forth. And so we're pretty, well, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you had a question. And the other thing is we have lots of producers. We have backyard producers, people that grow vegetables in their backyard, have an excess, and are able to create extra income for their family. Which is great for us as a city because we get to take tax revenue, not from fresh produce, but from other people that do like jewelry or fresh baked bread, stuff like that. We get the tax revenue from that through sales tax, which is also fabulous. And then the last point, the fees, sorry. So the fees will be very, very low, especially for this first year. If we're looking at producers, $20 or under per week for about 22, 23 weeks, and then a discount on that if you sign up for the full amount. I've already had producers approach me from speaking with the community about it that are excited and interested in doing it. So when I'm talking local, I want to be focused on Roy. So Roy City residents will get first priority to be vendors at the market. And then it'll kind of go out from there. So then it'll be, Weber County will get the next priority and so on and so forth. No more than 250 miles from where the farmer's market is held, or 250 from Roy, and we can negotiate that. And then unless something cannot be farmed or produced within those 250 miles, then we can seek other places, such as Alaskan fish is something that we can't get here, obviously. Fish is kind of hard to get here in good quality anyway, so that's something we could look at getting from outside.
So a couple questions in regards to that. Just so you know, from the agriculture side, Ogden Farmers Market just drives the agricultural people just about crazy. But the Salt Lake one is much, well, it has been, you know, they've had some problems with since COVID and stuff like that. So I would say let's don't necessarily pattern it after the Ogden Farmers Market. So if that's all right with you. And then, you know, and that kind of thing. But, you know, one of the other things is, you know, Bountiful started, and they have a very successful one, and they were able to keep their fees very low. And I would really think that a pattern after that is a much better farmer's market. If there's a way, and you probably have worked with those people. When you're talking about the Park City, you're probably talking about Silly Park, and then Volker's, the one he's got there on Wednesday and stuff like that. And on the one on Sunday and stuff like that. You're talking about that. So have you already talked to those kind of vendors about trying to bring them in, and you got some connections that way is what you're thinking for? And are you counting things like prepared items as ag stuff, or is that part of your 30%?
So when we're talking about the 70% food, that's anything that is SNAP eligible, if you're familiar with the
Okay.
SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance.
So you're saying food, not necessarily agriculture. Okay, I
Right.
see your slash, agriculture slash food. Uh-huh.
To aid with the food security, again, for both low-income families, which we do have in Roy, as well as people that are just trying to keep their budget. So.
And what are the other markets that you've specifically organized?
So I've organized the Wheeler Farm Sunday Market
sure.
for the last 2 years, and then various markets I've been involved in, like the day-to-day managing of it.
And so one of the concerns is when you have a private market versus a city market, you know, the private vendor has to be so careful because, you know, are they representing Roy City or are people thinking that it's Roy City and that sort of thing? So I would just want to make sure, whether it's you or whoever it is that gets that, you know, we're very careful with that, Travis, because when people come here, they are going to think that Roy City is involved in it somehow, and so we just want to be really careful because there have been other markets that have tried to go on that are private, and it's not a very good representation for a city.
Which I can understand. I actually am an employee of Salt Lake County. That's my full-time gig. So I deal with this all the
So
time.
on both sides of it, yeah.
Yep.
Great.
So when you're talking you've got a percentage of ag and then purchase, I'm assuming,
That would be arts and crafts type
right,
things.
why the divide? Like, why are you setting a number? What's the
So-
purpose of that?
A true farmer's market is just when farmers get together and sell fresh, uncut, sometimes unwashed food, which is actually completely unregulated by the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. So that is what a farmer's market is. So in order to maintain the integrity of a farmer's market, the focus has to be food. And then the arts and crafts help support, because farmers' fees are very low. So in order to pay for my time, fees for insurance, fees for cleanup, any employees that I have to have, we need to have the 30% that pay the bulk of the fee, which is still very low. We're talking maybe $35, $40 a week for the arts and crafts or the extras.
Okay, go ahead.
So since would be privately run then by her, you would be in charge of all the advertising, and then we wouldn't put it like in our Connection magazine or anything like that?
It
Or-
really has to do with how the RFP is going to be written and Roy City's involvement with that. And I think to the questions that are being asked, and particularly Diane's issue, if you elect to go ahead and let's proceed with this, you really need to see how you draft the RFP, because the RFP will define Roy's involvement to the extent that it can, okay, in this. I see this more to the private sector side, but there will be a public sector component only because it's on public land. And Roy City would have to agree to that. And that's hence the reason for the RFP, is to allow everybody an option to do that. So, other questions and comments? Thanks for your input.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I think, Travis, we just need to get from the council now, how do you want to proceed with this farmer market idea? What would you like to see happen next?
I'm good with it.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great location.
It is.
And
That's
so
so
I
from
think
our opinion,
people
we
would
think that's a better location than the ones you suggested.
Right.
But yeah.
Because people will drive by just out of curiosity and probably stop and check it out like a garage sale or something. I always stop for those. So I think that's what you got going for you, is the location. It's just great right there. And I think you should give it a shot. Sounds like you've been involved and know what you're doing, and
Okay.
I think it would be great.
Andy.
And all I do and appreciate the input is always that, but recognize the fact is any person has a right and have the opportunity to basically, in a sense, bid. Not sure how you're going to bid, but how they respond to the RFP. So, and then they'll have to go through some source selection process that the city will use.
Do you have to do the RFP? Can you say this year and then open it up for next year? How does that work?
There could be a grievance by somebody else that doesn't have the opportunity to do it, so
Okay.
it would, legally, it would be
Better.
more responsible. yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, in regards to that, Andy, like, some of the legal responsibilities and liability, I know she talked about that in the contract a little bit, but, worst case scenario, where would we fit in that? Okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, here's what it comes down to then. And I'm not talking about trust, but remember, this is the first time we're really pushing out on this. Does the council want to see a copy so you can read the RFP before it's released?
I would.
Or do you feel comfortable to go ahead and just allow the staff to go ahead and start the process? What would you like to do?
I'd like to see the RFP first, please.
I would too.
Okay, okay.
Do we have to wait for another council meeting to decide that?
No, no.
Because I don't think we're doing another council meeting this month.
Oh.
Well, that's correct, but but the key to this conversation would be, is what I just heard would be, is they'd like to see it.
We would, yeah, we could email
Just see
it out.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you
Just
read
see
and respond, it doesn't have to basically, you're saying is you like the idea, you're willing to move forward, but I'm sensing your position would be, is I'd just like to see what this first RFP is going to look like before we release it. Does that make sense? Okay, and then you can provide any feedback to Travis. You okay with that, Matt? Okay, so we got a good to go, but with the prerequisite, you will provide a copy of the RFP for the final look for the city council to go ahead and make comment on and send it.
So the first one is, you're looking at this year, this May, is that 8 weeks? 8 weeks, okay. 8 weeks, okay.
So why were you thinking May 18th, actually?
Because that's the day that we usually start getting, you get microgreens, you get baked foods.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller, we'd probably be
Yeah.
10 to 15 vendors versus peak season would be August.
Sure.
So we would have 30 to 50.
Mm-hmm. And that is your goal, 50? You think you'll have room for that over there, and that's your goal is 50? Thanks.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I think we got clear direction on moving forward with that. Thank you. The estimated completion time on the bridge construction on Midland Drive over the canal. Brandon, help us with this one. This is just more status where we are on this.
Yeah, so we're in great shape. They paved Monday. They're gonna call her today and tomorrow and let that set up Thursday and hopefully open it up to traffic Friday morning.
Ooh.
So, and alls we're lacking from there is just the fencing, which can obviously be done after the road's open, so,
Okay,
yep.
perfect.
We're
Look
there.
at Nancy, you can see him. You're like, they can see the road and they're like, well,
Yeah.
can I go down that?
We've seen some people drive through
Yep.
before it's paved, so.
Perfect. The reason why that's important, council, is we were told, Matt, we were told when this started, and I think Brandon, you probably got the word too, that it's if you're not done, they're turning the water on. So hopefully you got it done before the water starts coming down the canal. Perfect. And next year, we're anticipating to do the one on 4800.
I believe 2024 is when
Is it 2024?
grants.
Okay. I just recognize we have two issues, do sidewalks over the canal, and we wanted to get the kids out of the road and on a sidewalk. This was gonna fix the big one, but there's another one on 4800 we have to fix as well. And 2024 will be our target, okay? We'll watch for that. Maybe we can expedite that movement. Thank you. ARPA funds,
Okay.
one of our favorites.
Yeah. So I wanted to have this discussion for a couple of reasons. First, I did receive a couple of questions about the sewer lift station over there by Herefordshire. Just wanted to clarify a couple of things with that. I didn't want to have any confusion with it. So the idea of the lift station, currently, when you go across 1900 West, the sewage is actually going to Central Weaver Sewer District through Ogden City. We have an interlocal agreement with them, but we're not paying wheeling fees off of that. It's expired, and we have been hit up by them to improve the lines and then start wheeling fees. Our wheeling fees for other cities are double the sewer rates, so you'd be literally about $60 extra a month for residents over in that area for those wheeling fees, plus about Originally it was a couple $1 million, started out $1 million, ended around 5 million with the possibility of getting some extra funding from the state. So a sewage lift station's about $1.5 million. What that would do is lift the sewage from below by Airport Road up and over 1900 West to go down to North Davis Sewer District. So it would be bypassing the whole Ogden City thing. We wouldn't be,
Have you talked to
Pink.
North Davis about that?
we have not, no.
Maybe we don't want it.
Well, I know
The-
somebody, I
the
know somebody on the
alternative,
board, Joe.
council member is that we come up with $5 million to redo the line into Ogden.
I know somebody that's vice chair of the board down there.
Me
That's
too.
the reason why you're in this
Yep.
meeting.
So I didn't want any confusion with why we're pursuing that. There was some thought that we're doing the lift station to send it over to Central Weber through Ogden City still. The idea is to get away from relying on another government entity and just being by ourselves, so. Second thing is ULCT, you may have noticed over the last couple of weeks and ongoing, they're providing training. Last Wednesday, they provided a training with ARPA funding. If you recall, about 6 months ago, they talked to us about an employee that they were gonna hire just for ARPA. His name is Liam, and he provided some of that training. During that training, they said that we are able to do a revenue replacement up to $10 million. What that would do is reduce the reporting requirements for the ARPA funds. It would really free up that money. My idea is not necessarily change the philosophy of what we wanted to do with the money, but it would just free it up to be able to report easier, to also with the single audit, we wouldn't have the fees incurred. It would just provide an easier process, I guess. When I talked to Liam today with ULCT, he suggested that most cities are doing this right now. If you look at us, we're receiving around $4 million. They said that $10 million is more like your standard deduction on your taxes. I don't feel like I feel like the revenue replacement aspect of it, it would be hard to show that we are able to replace the revenue because revenues haven't necessarily decreased. Some line items have. But that standard deduction of the $10 million there would allow us to do that revenue replacement. The first report is due on April 30th, and so we have to have some guideline or some guidance before then in order to do that. I talked to our auditors with Wiggins today, Scott. He's looking into it as well for me, but he says it sounds like a go, so.
So I think the task, council, would be is that are you supportive of the idea of going ahead and look at moving the ARPA funds? We've received now 2.1 million, 2.5 today. Okay, so that was our first tranche, and we got another one coming in about a year, and that will be another 2.1 or 2.5? Okay. We have to report on that, as he says, on the 30th of April. He's got a solution. It doesn't take away, as you mentioned, what we plan to do, and there was some talk about at one time using some of that money to help us with the infrastructure when they crack open 5600, because there's going to be a lot of work when they put the new road in, and we could use some of that money. The timing seems to be right. We can use some of that money to help us do the infrastructure changes before they put a new cap on top of 5600 with the 5 lanes. So, but he's got a solution that we think we can go ahead and get it, take care of all of the auditing elements of this, and still use the money the way it was originally intended. He hasn't proposed yet a budget that talks about paying the 1.1 or 1.2 or 1.5 to do the lift station. That still has to come through a budget process, and you have to approve that adjustment. But it does suggest now, at least if we consider that we're really not doing this on behalf of Ogden or the Central Weber Sewer District. We're really taking our, funny way of putting it, we're taking our own sewer, okay, and we're channeling it down from the east side of 1900. We're channeling that down into the Davis side, okay, the North Davis Sewer District side. And the benefit of that personally for Ogden and those is that we're not putting a lot of sewer down that line, so it may very well be for their benefit. It may very well they don't have to do any expansions or growth on their side because we've taken our component out of it. And right now, we don't sit on any other board. We don't have any influence on the sewer districts at the Central Weber. The only one we have is in the North Davis, and everything else is on North Davis. So we have everything that we get rid of. You'll like that comment, right, Ms. Parker? Everything we get rid of stays in North Davis. Such a difficult topic to talk about. Are you okay with him going ahead then and moving this over to revenue replacement strategy?
So Matt, what's the catch? So is there a catch to this? What's the disadvantage for doing what you've just proposed?
There is a disadvantage. One of the biggest disadvantages is that the state has some matching funds that we could actually get, and it disqualifies you for those matching ARPA funds.
That's right.
The last I checked, it is highly unlikely that we would get some of those funds. It was like we'd have like a 0.05% chance. There was billions of dollars requested and only $50 million there. So the likelihood of it is pretty slim, but it does exclude you from being able to participate with those type of grants.
Well, that don't sound like much of a disadvantage then.
You're not gonna get it anyway. What's the
It-
difference?
But it just really, the way they pitched it, it was really streamlining the process is what it is doing. And it was one of the issues that we had with COVID, or with COVID, but with CARES Act, is they kept on changing the requirements of the CARES Act. And we're still today getting questions on what we spent the money on a couple of years later. So streamlining that process is kind of nice. They did say that this is the final requirement that they issued. Hopefully they learn from the CARES Act not to change and change and change again. But who's to say that they won't? I don't know.
It's federal funds. Obviously, they have a right to make some adjustments.
Yep.
Does that protect us a little bit if we do that then right away?
We
Or
could have
is
a
there
good
really-
argument, yes.
The city would like some clear direction. Are you okay with them then moving with the revenue replacement strategy as he explained it?
Yep.
Everybody?
I think that sounds good.
Okay, I think you got clear direction. Let's go with that strategy.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Pioneers, this is just a head nod, council. We've been requested, we talked briefly earlier, we requested if we want to participate at all within the Ogden Pioneer Days Parade. Okay, Brittany's already indicated she'd like to build a float.
You'll do a great job.
No, I'm just kidding.
I think I'm out of town
Strike
that day.
that from the minutes, okay?
What day is it again? I'm so sorry.
It's
On the
it's
25th.
July 24th or close there
Yeah.
proximity.
I think it's on a Sunday, so I believe they're celebrating on the 25th Monday. Does that?
25th
Well,
Monday?
usually parade's on a Saturday, isn't it?
Maybe
I
we
don't-
can talk
or
to
maybe-
Gunzenhauser and see if he wants to put his hermit in there.
20.
I would think I'd be more willing to be in the parade if our high school was involved in it, but since they've bowed out, we don't have our band, our officers, or anything in it no more. I haven't gone to it for years, and I usually do something with my family on that day, so you're more than happy to be on the float, but I probably won't be on it.
Well, I think it's not a matter of finding
Right.
people, because you can get into the Parks and Rec and say, hey, football boys, who wants to be in this? Or
Yeah.
hey, council, do you want to be on this? So I don't think finding the people to be
Right,
on it,
I
I think
agree.
it's you making it. It's going to be the,
It's
Yeah,
a
if you're
lot
gonna
of
make a
work.
It's a
float,
lot of
if you,
work,
if you
Brittany.
want to basically put a banner in there and have some people walk it, it's really up to you. I guess really what it comes down to, do you have any interest at all representing Roy City, representing in that parade?
I think it's nice, but who's in charge? It sounds like we don't have anyone that's really excited about being in charge.
The mayor's a
So
good float builder. I've seen him.
No, I built one float. I don't build
did
any
a
other
float
floats.
too.
You've
I
built
think
more
it
than
is-
I have, so you're way more experienced.
I think it would be awesome for us to be a part of it. I would say, I
That's
would,
what I said. Approach Gunzenhauser and see if you can put the hermit in it. Put some Roy
Anyway.
City people in the back of it
Do
and a
that.
banner on the
you
side
could,
of it.
I mean, it could be as easy as
he
that.
loves doing it. All you got to do is pay for his
But
gas.
are you being serious about making a float? Were you serious?
No.
Or not? Oh, you're
Love
not
it.
serious.
But
Oh, come on.
you could put a couple of banners on the side saying this is Roy City. And
You
I
could.
was teasing Brittany because she's so busy doing everything else, I figured she could add this to her list.
Build a float. Okay.
Floats are hard.
It's called a root beer float,
Getting
right?
something in there would not
Wave
be,
your magic
I think
wand.
it'd be okay.
Well, okay,
To
we
represent
got a
us.
suggestion on the table. I think the Pauls have basically suggested they have a friend that is an 18-track, diesel-driven monster military truck.
Very cool.
It was in the Roy Parade last year.
I seen it. You want to consider?
Matt, your like, what do you think, like, as far as getting
What day of the week is it?
It is Monday, the 25th.
the 25th?
Yeah, Diane was right.
Yeah, Diane was right.
Comments?
I don't know if the staff is very vetted in building floats.
Don't have to be a float.
No.
Never
We can
done
put a
that
banner.
before.
We can put a banner on both sides of this humongous, assuming the Pauls could find this this amphibious track vehicle, and we can say that's the Roy representation. If they want to drag a little trailer behind it, I guess they could do that.
I mean, I could do a little research and see if he's even available or interested.
On that date.
And then report back. When do we need to know by?
I just have to respond. There's a date on my letter, so I'll tell you what.
Let me call him tomorrow.
Okay, would you get back with us then, Joe?
What about your party bus, Joe? Can't you put some banners on that?
Well, I think we need to be, as far as a city, I think we need to be present. We've been invited to it.
Could.
I think we
I
should.
bet we haven't been in it for
Then it's another piece.
I don't know.
Oh.
if
I'll
I've
have
ever
to look
been
at
in
that and
ten,
get back with you.
15 years.
Okay, Joel, if you'll
for
get
years,
back
they
with
just-
me, and then we'll go from there. It might very well be, Brandon, Travis, we may need some help maybe getting a banner, okay? And then we can debate, if there's something here, we might will debate who will be able to write in it. And I always thought that maybe the best two people in there would be Andy and Matt right up front, okay? And we may have to strap them in there.
Get
I
your
say
arm
we-
ready.
I say we put your front loader in it, Brandon.
Could do that. Okay, Joe Paul, you'll check on that, get back with us? Perfect, okay? Other than that, if we can't pull that together, everybody basically says we'll attend the parade and maybe not participate. Okay, city manager report?
Yeah, I wanted to give a little feedback. Andy researched the code real quick on Mr. Welchman's comments earlier today. So it's 90 decibels, 25 feet away is the requirement, but there is an exception with safety devices, warning signals, and safety signals.
Yeah.
So there is an exception there. So they would be within our city ordinance currently.
And that was the whole concern we had. We didn't know what the ordinance said, and that provision that talks about safety signals, that backup requirement, they're required by law in some cases to have that.
Right.
The question is that is there a possibility of muting that down if they exceed? And it sounds like they're just really loud. And so at least we can check to see if there's any way they might be able to calm them down anyway. Can't take away the safety issue, but we surely could ask the question is, do they have to be that loud that you have to have earplugs when you're up against it? So we can surely check on that, okay? They come that way, yeah.
So there's not a volume control, I'm assuming.
No, so maybe they could put a cap over it or
Okay.
something, yeah, okay. Well, we may be in trouble, but we'll follow up as best we can on this. And he's got your number, and we can surely, when we get this thing fleshed out in the next day or two, we'll give you a call and let you know exactly what we can do, okay? Yeah, if you wanted to make, since we're on that topic, if you want to make another comment you had, please come to the mic, just give us your name and number again, house number, and then go ahead and tell us what you wanted to share with us.
My name's Eldon Welchman. I live at 3675 South, 2025 West. And another concern I had is where they're building the parking lot, what are they going to do for sound? I guess it's legal to have a car that can make all kinds of noise anymore because they're going down all these other highways. Is cars and motorcycles is there going to be some type of sound barrier? And then I got thinking about it, is there going to be some type of light barrier so they're not shining our headlights down into our yards?
I don't know if the design site plan, I didn't see it, Steve. Do you know if the site plan talk about any type of a fencing that borders the existing and this new development?
Well, I mean, again, we're going residential against residential.
I know.
So, the same argument could be is the single-family homes headlights gonna be shining into their property versus their property shining. I mean, again, we got kind of, yes, it's a new development, it hasn't been there before, but our ordinance doesn't say because you're multifamily residential, therefore you can't have light shining to single-family residential. If it was commercial, then yeah, there's a lot more things we can do. but residential, residential.
And there's anything in the developer's plans that talk about putting up any type of a fencing or anything along?
The fence around the property already.
Okay, so they'll just use existing fence.
Residential, there's no requirement for
Yeah, and that's the reason why I asked the question if the site plan showed it, because sometimes the development may have put a fence up just because they wanted to or felt they should, but as he stated, it sounds like it's perfectly legal if it just used the existing fences at the back of everybody's yard. So I didn't know what the site plan show said.
Well, the fences in their yard is about this high, and their parking lot's clear up here.
Oh,
I mean, their parking lot is right now probably 8 feet above the fence.
oh, that's we had this conversation, Diane, not too long ago about where the fence is relative to the topography. Comment on that, Steve.
Again, most of their parking lot is a two-car garage. So,
It looks like it's just leveling
well,
out
a lot of
spot.
it is they gotta bring in dirt, let it settle so they can build up buildings on it.
So I guess I don't know
Okay.
exactly where they're building the buildings. It just looked like they was building the parking lot right there in the back.
They're townhomes.
There's no parking lot. They'll have a few visitor parking stalls throughout, but most of it's two-car garages.
I wonder, Steve,
Where they got, you know,
It's
extra
not an
parking.
apartment complex, so there won't be large parking.
I'm wondering, Steve, and you bring us a good points, because if you're concerned about others will be, do you have a plat or do you have a site plan? Maybe you can show them how this is going to lay out ultimately?
In the office, yeah.
Would you consider then maybe have Steve show you what it's going to look like? Because the only thing we can respond to is, does it meet the ordinance of the city? And how is this layout going to impact you and impact your neighbors? And if Steve is correct, there may not be any impact at all. And I think if you see that, you'll probably feel a little more comfortable that maybe we can find a solution when this is all done.
Okay.
And we'll still address the noise issue to see if there's any options available there.
Okay.
Okay, comment?
The great thing is, when it was rezoned, you're excluding a commercial development. in
Yeah.
there. So, having residential, which is gonna be a lot more quieter.
Yeah.
A lot less traffic, a lot less noise. So
Yeah, you're right.
Right.
Because it was zoned commercial.
Well, I guess it's just the way they're excavating stuff.
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly, at this
concerned.
point. It obviously will change, but I think the drawings that Steve has may give you at least some comfort that says this is the way it's supposed to look, even though it probably doesn't look that way at this moment because of the way they're packing dirt.
Yeah.
Okay? And he has the stuff. He can probably show you that stuff, okay?
When would I have access to their
You just have to make arrangements with Steve to come see him, and he can show you what you'd like,
okay.
okay?
And then what about when they're hooking water up and sewage up there? I think they're coming down in the middle of our road to
Yeah,
attach.
again, I'm not sure what the drawings actually show in terms of where those connections are. I don't know where those are.
And then, I guess my wife is handicapped, so she can't walk up the street to get into a car. We've got to have access out of our driveway when they start hooking into the city.
Yeah, I can't answer that piece either. I don't have that answer.
Okay, I'm just,
They're good questions. I think we have to start with Steve, because he can give you a visual what this is going to look like, and then maybe you can derive some answers that you're looking for from that. And if there's other ones, there's always a public comment period. Please come back if you see something from all this that you feel like we need to take another look at, okay?
just bringing these issues up because that's
I like the
a couple
idea.
of my neighbors coming up with the ideas, and I did too.
I like the idea. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us, because it's important.
Okay, I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Okay,
Just a couple of more dates
Okay.
for you as well. April 16th, remember the Easter egg hunt, we spoke about this, previous city council meetings, but 10 a.m., and it'll be over by probably 10 a.m. too, so that'll go
And-
pretty quick.
What
Probably-
park's that at?
George Wallen,
Okay. I'm gonna bring my grant.
so come early if you could. City council meeting, I wanted to discuss a little bit on the 19th, on April 19th. That is also the week of ULCT training. ULCT starts April 20th to the 22nd. If something urgent comes up, we can have a city council meeting, but if not, we are planning on canceling the next council meeting. Also, the DNRG Trail, will be closed April 13th to the 19th. There's going to be some engineers working in the area. There's going to be a bridge over the DNRG trail, and they're doing some soil samples and stuff down there. So it will be closed during that time. We'll try to put up some signs. 2700 goes that whole length, that they could bypass the trail system so people don't get hung up there.
And that's, what dates are those?
That is the 13th through the 19th
Of April?
of April.
Perfect.
4975, just right here behind us on 2000 West and 2125 will be closed tomorrow. Local traffic will be able to go through there. They're going to put a storm drain pump in there. And then also the last date, just to know about, is April 25th, the CTC dinner from 5 to 7:30. So
And that's the one right out in the
that
front
it
of
will
the
be in
Hope Center.
The Hope Center, yep.
Probably,
Okay.
I think
it's gonna be
that's-
probably in the back.
You're gonna try to move it to the back?
Yeah, I think they're gonna do it back here. That way they can go sit on the grass, and
Okay, we just need to make sure we work that with the city.
they
so-
submitted their site plan.
We
yet.
have not seen anything, no.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's gonna be out back.
okay. Okay, council, comments, questions?
Nope, I know, as you can see, we got finally the Welcome to Roy City sign on Sunset, and then he's been working on the rock. He's been sending me pictures, because it was a little rough, and he's got it all sanded down and ready to put in, so hopefully this
Perfect.
coming up week.
That's the one on the north.
Yes.
The one on the south looks nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, anybody else have something?
I was just
Please.
gonna say that with graduation coming up next month, I was just wondering, does the city do anything for the graduates for Roy City, or like for Roy High? Or is there any involvement with that or anything?
So in previous years, we do have budgeted $1,000 that we donate towards something.
Okay.
Last year, it was actually the fireworks that they put that money toward.
Oh yeah. Okay. Awesome.
I don't know what they're planning on doing with it this year, though.
Okay, so you just leave it up to the
The school.
just the school. Okay. That was all. I just wanted to see if there was any involvement at all. I'm not graduating this year, but I know.
But she is the new student body president for Roy High next year.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Diane, Sophie, Ann? Okay, I just got a couple of things, then I'll ask for a motion. Appreciate the dates, make sure you focus on those dates. Council, a few council meetings ago, even before some of you actually joined us on the council, there was a discussion that was taking place that we would consider drafting up an ordinance that would take a look at the possibility of establishing an ordinance on use of water during the hours of 10 a.m. in the morning to 6 p.m. at night. Roy City does not have an ordinance on the books today that provides any element of asking residents to not use water during that time. It was talked about in a previous council. It's also what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, when we meet in our council in May, I'd like to have Andy, if he could, maybe if he'd look at drafting up an ordinance that talks about, we're referring it to the time of day watering ordinance. Does that sound familiar? If it doesn't, it should.
So my recommendation on that is just be consistent with what our secondary water
And that's what
is.
this is. To the extent that we talk about use of when to water, there's a little bit more restriction that the secondary water team is looking at. We're not carrying that far because they're also scoping at this moment, may have to change how many times a week you can water. We just don't know where we stand on that because we're really talking more about culinary.
So are we on shaky ground if we said that we just mirrored theirs 100%? And if they don't turn on their water till May 1st, we don't allow watering with city water until May 1st?
Technically, to the question is, you can write an ordinance to do that. If you want to take the culinary side, which is the focus of this, really the focus of this conversation, to move in terms of providing some type of an ordinance on the culinary side of our using water. That's really what we're talking about.
It does sound like an enforcement nightmare if I think about it, but
Well, it would be. But
But if you have your neighbor's culinary water, and he has a really nice green lawn, and you can only water, well, I just did my council corner, and I put all the recommendations from the Roy Water Conservancy in there, and I said, and culinary water users should go by the same rules.
So
I
how
put
many
that-
cross connections are we gonna have this summer?
Well, I know, but
Let's hope
you're
we
gonna be
don't.
able to tell all the cheaters by their green lawn. And so, I mean, if they have a green lawn and yours is
Not necessarily.
Interesting
culinary-
thought.
I watered twice a week.
So,
like,
There, because
but-
there are some techniques
There's a lot
that are,
of, yeah.
yeah, there are
Worked
some new
my
things.
buns off to get mine green last year at 2 times a week.
yeah.
Okay.
I know, I only watered mine 2 times a week too. But,
You're right, some were dead across the street.
yeah, and
Yes.
culinary, I mean, that's her
Can they-
drinking water.
It-
Can
it's
they
the
be
drink.
recommendations and not like you say, I can't even imagine the headache of the law.
Do we have to have a regulation? Can't we just, people are
Recommend.
going, right. Because it adds so many other problems with it.
Well,
with the
it's not gonna,
regulation.
I don't know how you'd enforce it for one
Yeah,
thing.
I think that
so.
a recommendation is a better way. Sometimes we're so overregulated that it's nice to.
Well, and that's a good point. There is no regulation at this moment to restrict anybody in the city on culinary water
Right.
to not water 6 times a week. There's absolutely not, until we just don't have any drinking water,
Right.
okay?
And they should have to follow the guidelines of not watering between 10 and 6, just like secondary
They
water.
should, but there's no ordinance. This particular ordinance would only address that component. It doesn't address anything about how often they water, because we may not necessarily, although I agree, we can surely encourage, even pass a resolution to encourage the residents to say, follow the mandate that the secondary water team have provided. But we have there's no restriction in terms of them saying is you can't water between the hours of 10 and 6. And yet we know that's the worst time to basically water in the middle of the winter or summer.
Right.
So this ordinance would only focus on trying to help people understand that if we get to the point where it comes down whether or not we have drinking water or not, there's nothing in the ordinance that can stop us. All this does simply say is, council, if you get notification by Weber Basin, we're running out of water and you've got to do something, then you exercise the elements within the ordinance. Otherwise, the only thing you can report back would be is you can't enforce it. And that'll leave simply, Brandon, turn on the pumps, okay? Because we go to the deep wells and we pull water out of the aquifer. Because if it dries up in Weber Basin, and that's the whole thing that's unfolding right now, it dries up in Weber Basin. The only benefit Roy has is this, okay, and you're not going to like either one of these. We got 4 deep wells. We tap into the deep wells. We turn on the machines. There's also provision within the agreement we have with West Haven
Yeah.
that says we sell culinary water to West Haven.
Right.
It says in that agreement, and if you need it, I'll send it to you, but it says this: if we in Roy City residents don't have enough, we shut the water off to West Haven's drinking water. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but when you start messing with people's drinking water, life gets really interesting. And so all I'm suggesting is, if we get by the experts in a situation that suggests that we got to do something, you will have an ordinance on the books that will allow us to simply do something. Today, we can't do anything except you can go in and says, I'm going to change the rates by which we charge people water, and we double them. So the more water you use to mow or use your lawn, the more you're going to pay. That's the only restriction we have on them. And some people, maybe they don't care. But I care about whether or not we have drinking water or not.
Right.
That is a very good restriction, though, monetary, and that way it,
It's a good
people do
one.
it. It's a very good one.
We
But-
do have a progressive billing cycle as it is right now.
Yeah.
Right.
So the more
So-
you use, the more you pay.
So I think that that's also very, helps people have agency that way, they know that they're, but it's a choice for them to, and then we have recommendations.
The
So I
only
do
thing,
think that's a good way.
yeah, and it's a good one, and it surely has been used, and it's good, but it's been a time when, in fact, and we've had that on the books for a long time, but it's been used under the premise that simply says we have a lot of water.
I just hope West Haven is looking for property to get wells instead of,
I don't know.
because
I mean, if we have
seriously.
deep wells, they ought to be able to get them.
Right.
Start digging.
Water is an interesting thing. We don't own water. Somebody owns it, and we just simply, we get our share. That's how it kind of works.
I get it. It's interesting because we have a piece of property in Idaho, and we've drilled 3 different wells, and one piece of property over, they've went down a third of the distance we have and have beautiful water.
Yeah.
Ours sucks. So I understand it.
So the intent was this. If you have to exercise an element with an ordinance that has to basically help people to be compliant, all this is going to do is address one small component, which is a very important component. It's an ordinance that focuses on from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Don't water.
I really like the idea of the suggestion and not doing the overreach and overregulation. And we have such a few number of people luckily using culinary, without secondary, not saying that the other people couldn't do it, but those that do have secondary water are going to be, they have that kind of watch list anyway. They already kind of have that mindset. So I kind of like trying to let people be self-regulatory.
Okay? Other thoughts? You got really 1 or 2 choices. Just give us direction. It's okay. We don't take this stuff personal. What do you want to do?
We can see what this year brings and how compliant everybody is with, watering, and if it gets to the point where we have to do a resolution because people, aren't being mindful of what time they're watering their lawns, and maybe we could do something then, give them, I don't know.
Oh, and
Water is just so scary right now, but there's people that have, most people have their sprinkler systems set to go on like in the morning and stuff, but I've had neighbors that are older, and my mom was one of them, flooded out the lady behind her 3 times, left her water on and forgot to turn it off. And then you see businesses, with their water running in the middle of the day, and then their sprinkler heads doing Old Faithful, and, I don't know, I guess we can give them a chance to try to comply to, I don't know.
Well, just recognize, Anna, and you both, Diane and Rand, you bring good points. The only thing the ordinance basically do is puts a regulatory requirement on it. Whether you penalize them, whether you shut their water off, we're not talking about those elements. We're simply saying to them is that there's an ordinance on the books that says we'd rather you not water from 10 to 6, and here's the reason why. But if you feel like you want to take a trial and we just see how this unfolds, I'm okay with that. But I will tell you this, Travis, and you know this better than I do. If anybody spots us watering from 10 to 6 on our parks, I get a phone call.
Right.
And they don't like
So
us
do the
watering
schools.
when the secondary water people is. There's provisions within this ordinance and our current ordinance. If it's new lawn, if there's some conditions on that, you're exempt from that. You can water 4 or 5 times a day if you have to, because it's new grass, new lawn. But the fact of the matter is, people have a tendency to be very judgmental with the city when it comes to us to basically not conserving water, and that's the facts. But if you feel comfortable collectively, and all I need is one more of you to decide which way you go on this, that simply says, wait a year, we'll put this on hold and wait until we're ready to maybe have to strike this and let this year be this year we look at it, then that's fine. Just recognize the fact is, we got a draft ordinance here. Andy could spin something up in about 30 days, and if your situation changed, or if you want to do it next year, we can readdress it next year. But I will tell you this, so there's no confusion. There's a whole lot of bills that these legislators put out on water conservation. And some of those bills is going to require, Steve, which you will like, is going to require the Planning Commission to fundamentally come up in terms of how you're going to help restrict. This is in the bill itself of how you're going to restrict water. So the Planning Commission's got to come up with some ideas to do that, and then make those recommendations to the City Council. But they've honestly got a few years to make that happen. So we were just trying to get ahead of this thing to be able to solve this problem. I think is a problem out there. But your call.
Well, if we did a resolution, how will the citizens even find out that we had that resolution?
Because what you and I will do in our mayor and council quorum, we will simply go up there and make it clear in our policy, in our medium, it simply says there's a new ordinance and I say ordinance because we can pass a resolution to encourage, but you put an ordinance, that's a law. And it's going to go into the books as a law, and it's going to say you can't do this, and there would be some type of a penalty, a warning, a penalty, or whatever to that. So it just depends on how much you want to get, if there's a problem, how much you want to get your arms around the problem. Your call. I just need one more to support the two. If you two on the end, you and Sophie says, I'd like to see an ordinance, then guess what? That's a tie vote. And me and Miss Parker get to choose.
Yeah, so Joe, what do you think?
I'm just kidding. But Joe,
So what's
Sophie?
your, tell me your, Diane,
I believe that we have some measures in place with increased, it's kind of a stair-stepped funding, and so, I mean, billing, and so that limits people because
Right.
every time they use more, they have to do it. And I believe it's nice to allow people to have a little bit of choice and not to have always, government regulation on every little thing. Try to give them a chance to have some sort of agency and, try to help encourage them in other ways. Because I believe most people really are understanding and respectful of the difficult time. We have had a lot of
Cost
education.
will be a regulatory factor in that because, I mean, you're gonna get people that are gonna say, I don't care, I'm gonna go water my lawn anyway.
Exactly.
But I do think, I think myself of being conservative about water and don't run as much water in the sink as I used to and things like that, so.
I'd like to see the people be conscious and not make it a law, but definitely regulate it
Okay.
and recommend not watering.
The other problem is, the thing that we can't do, because it's culinary water that Weber Basin or Roy Water Conservancy can do, we can't shut their water off because they're watering their grass.
Right.
That's right.
And I
We
don't
can
want
give
somebody
them
out
a
there paying
fine,
for
and
tickets.
if they don't pay it,
Yeah.
we can hold them in contempt of court, and we can send them to jail, and we still didn't solve the problem. I think education, put as much in the articles as we can, maybe post stuff on the city Facebook page.
Well, I mean, if they don't watch TV or read the newspaper or don't go on Facebook, they've got to know we're in a drought. I mean, everybody's got to know, and hopefully they're
Well, yeah,
smart
you
enough.
can't turn the TV on without finding out about that.
Yeah, and so you have to know, and so hopefully people are already mindful of, I don't
I'm
know.
trying to save some water for the farmers.
Yeah.
Okay, Sophie, I sense you're leaning to basically maybe hold off a year and let's watch this unfold.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll hold off and we'll kind of work around that. I don't have anything else, council? Anybody else?
Can I make that motion now?
I would like to see a motion to adjourn. Joe, is that you?
So moved.
Do I have a second on that one?
I'll second it.
I like that end. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.
Just as a side note, there's a significant barn fire on 4300 West, just north of 4800 South. Our crew is actually on command of the fire. Do you know Lewis Meyer? The big yellow plantation house?